Hello and welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects nearly every American, Social Security. As it approaches its 90th anniversary, this system is more than just a government program. It's a promise, a social contract born from one of the darkest times in American history. But it's also a system facing a critical juncture. So how did it begin? How has it changed? And what does its future hold? Let's unpack the 90-year history of Social Security. Before 1935, the United States was an outlier among industrialized nations. It had no national social insurance. Economic security was a private matter, your savings, your family, or local charity. The Great Depression shattered that model. With unemployment skyrocketing and poverty rates among seniors topping 50%, the country was in crisis. The public was desperate for a solution. A popular idea called the Townsend Plan proposed a $200 monthly pension for everyone over 60, pushing President Franklin D. Roosevelt to create a federal solution. He formed the Committee on Economic Security, chaired by the remarkable Secretary of Labor, Francis Perkins. They studied European systems and crafted the Social Security Act of 1935. This landmark law didn't just create retirement benefits. It was an omnibus bill that also established a federal-state system for unemployment insurance and provided aid to dependent children and the blind. It was a fundamental shift in the government's role, establishing a new social contract. The program we know today looks vastly different from its origins. Initially, it only covered about half of the workers, excluding many agricultural and domestic workers, who were often women and minorities. The first payments weren't even monthly checks. The very first payout in 1937 went to a man named Ernest Ackerman for just 17 cents, a one-time lump sum. The first recurring monthly check wasn't issued until 1940 to Ida Mae Fuller for $22.54. But the system evolved quickly. Just 4 years in 1939, it was expanded to include benefits for the dependents and survivors of workers, transforming it from an individual retirement plan into a family-based safety net. The 1950s brought another massive expansion. Coverage was extended to millions of previously excluded workers, like the self-employed and farm workers. And critically, in 1956, Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, was created. This provided a lifeline for disabled workers, a hard-won victory that is now a core part of the system. The 1960s brought another monumental change. In 1965, as part of President Johnson's Great Society, Medicare was signed into law. Attached to the Social Security Act, it provided health insurance to Americans aged 65 and older, addressing a massive source of economic insecurity. Then came the 1970s and the problem of inflation. To protect retirees' purchasing power, Congress authorized automatic annual cost of living adjustments, or COLAs, starting in 1975. The same year, the Supplemental Security Income Program, or SSI, was created to provide a basic income for the elderly, blind, and disabled with very limited resources, funded by general tax revenues, but administered by the Social Security Administration. By the early 1980s, the system faced its first major financial crisis. The trust funds were on the verge of running dry. In a moment of political courage, a bipartisan group called the Greenspan Commission was formed to find a solution. The Social Security Amendments of 1983 were a masterclass in political compromise. They included a mix of changes to both taxes and benefits. The full retirement age was set to gradually increase from 65 to 67. For the first time, some Social Security benefits became taxable for higher-income individuals, and scheduled payroll tax increases were accelerated. These reforms were incredibly successful, shoring up the program's finances for decades and proving that crisis could be averted through bipartisan action. And that brings us to today. Once again, Social Security is facing long-term financial challenges. The reasons are primarily demographic. The massive baby boomer generation is retiring. People are living longer. and the ratio of workers paying into the system for every one retiree drawing from it is shrinking. The 2024 Trustees Report projects that the combined trust fund reserves will be depleted around 2035. Now, this does not mean Social Security will be bankrupt. That's a common misconception. If Congress does nothing, incoming payroll taxes would still be enough to pay about 80% of promised benefits. But an automatic 20% benefit cut for tens of millions of people would be catastrophic. So, what are the proposed solutions? They generally fall into three categories. First, increasing revenue. One of the most talked about ideas is to raise or eliminate the payroll tax cap. Right now, in 2025, you only pay Social Security taxes on the first $176, of your earnings. Anything above that is exempt. Raising or scrapping that cap would mean high earners pay more, significantly boosting revenue. Another option is simply to increase the payroll tax rate for all workers, though that would be a direct tax hike on everyone. The second category is modifying benefits. One idea is to raise the full retirement age again, beyond 67, to reflect longer life expectancies. The argument is that it encourages people to work longer, but critics rightly point out that this disproportionately hurts people in physically demanding jobs who may not be able to work longer. Another approach is changing how the annual cost of living adjustments, or COLAs, are calculated. Switching to a different inflation measure could either increase or decrease the annual benefit adjustments. The third category involves bigger, structural reforms. The idea of privatization periodically comes up, allowing workers to divert some of their Social Security taxes into private investment accounts. Proponents say this could lead to higher returns, while opponents warn it would expose retirees to market risk and undermine the entire principle of social insurance. More concrete plans also exist. For example, the Social Security 2100 Act, a Democratic proposal, would enhance benefits and fund them by applying the payroll tax to earnings above $400,000. On the other hand, various bipartisan plans combine smaller tweaks from all categories, like adjusting the retirement age for high earners while also raising the tax cap. For 90 years, Social Security has been a bedrock of American life, lifting millions out of poverty and providing a baseline of security for retirement, disability, and loss. The financial challenges it faces today are real, but they are not insurmountable. The history of Social Security is a history of evolution and reform, of finding political will to adapt to new realities. The debate over its future is more than just balancing a ledger. It's a conversation about what we owe each other, the kind of society we want to live in, and the promises we are willing to keep across generations. Thanks for listening to G Fun Facts Online.